All right, it is Wednesday night, 7:30. That means it is time for the 573 report. I am Gabe DeArmond, PowerMizzou.com publisher. Appreciate you guys starting to figure this out. There's a few of you already online. Some of you have already done me the favor of hitting the like button on the show, which helps us in ways I still don't really understand, but I do appreciate you doing it. And we've got Mitchell Forde on hold. We're going to bring him in just a second, but I'm going to make sure I do this before we get started. Do a couple things. First of all, again, hit the like button, hit subscribe to our channel. You'll get notifications, everything we do, all that. But beyond that, this show is sponsored by 573 Tees. It's a local company here in Columbia. Find them at 573tees.com. And what I'm going to do before I bring Mitch on, I just want to throw up a couple screenshots, show you guys what they have, some of the stuff you guys can get, Mizzou stuff, Chief stuff right there. They've got Royals gear. They've got Cardinals gear. They've got some Columbia stuff here, Columbia, Missouri. So you guys check that out, 573tees.com. If you go to our site, powermizzou.com, you can go to the 573 report there. And you can go through the link in the story and get a 10% discount on your first purchase. So I hope you guys do that. Hope you will join us and comment, questions, whatever you got throughout the show. And now we are going to the Bob Douglas special of the evening. Mitchell Forde is joining us. Mitch, what's going on, man?
Oh, not too much. Good to be back for another week.
Yeah, we keep on making it. This is like I don't know, week 5. So once we hit double digits, I feel like we're beyond the point of being canceled. But since it's up to me,
we're gonna. I mean, we're uncatchable by the Missouri football team playing games. They fell behind last week. They can't catch us.
This is a good point. We might take a Wednesday off. Hopefully not due to COVID, but we'll figure it out. So let's get this out of the way first. It's going to take like 20 seconds. LSU was 11 days ago. I'm kind of done talking about that. We did a show last week. Like, I understand Missouri fans are still high, but that's over. It's time to go on to the rest of the season.
Yeah, definitely. It was a big one. And as we said at the time, even though afterwards you can kind of look back and say maybe it wasn't as surprising as it initially thought, you don't take anything away. You don't apologize coming out of that game. But that said, it's been 2 weeks now. There's going to be, a lot more good teams left on the schedule here in a 10-game SEC season. And there's a lot of unknowns still with COVID and how that's going to impact the schedule. So there's plenty to talk about.
Yeah, good for Josh Bledsoe, good for Connor Bazelak, good for whoever else did well in that game. But up next is, hang on, I got to think about it for a few minutes, Kentucky this weekend, because it was originally going to be Florida, and then it was maybe going to be Vanderbilt, and now it's Kentucky, and this is kind of the new normal. I figure about 6 hours before we do this show every week, we're going to for sure have an idea who Missouri's playing on Saturday.
Yeah, I think Wednesday, Dan Mullins said, last week, Wednesday seems to be kind of the cutoff. So usually by the time we hit the air, we should have an idea. It has been kind of wild, going into every week not knowing for sure, when or where the game is going to be played or who Mizzou's going to be playing. Eli Drinkwitz said he game planned for 3 different opponents at various points last weekend. But, it's kind of, it comes with the territory of playing football in a pandemic. It's certainly better than the alternative, which is no football.
Right. And look, if we don't know who Missouri's playing, we're just going to get on here and make stuff up for an hour every week. I mean,
that's what we do anyway.
Right. Yeah. Pretty much. I mean, the show prep is exhausting here. We definitely put in a lot to this. No, but in all seriousness, Kentucky. So I was stunned when I looked on Monday morning, and I guess I shouldn't have been surprised because I've seen the games. There are 10 teams in the SEC that have already lost 2 games. I mean, we're only 4 weeks in. This is I don't know if it means the SEC is balanced or bad or both, or this is just a season like we haven't seen. But Missouri at 1-2 is realistically like one win out of being in second place in the SEC East.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I think, I kind of attribute it more just to, us not being used to the scheduling format. I mean, it's not unusual that the majority of teams lose 2 SEC games over the course of the year. And normally we'd be, about halfway through the SEC schedule right now, with some teams having played 3 conference games, some teams having played 4, most having played 4. So, it's not like that would normally be out of the question, but usually, you'd have a lot of teams get 3 or 4 wins first. So it doesn't look as jarring when they're, 6-2 versus 2-2. But also, I mean, this is kind of where the conference has been headed for a few years now. There's 1 or 2 teams that are a lot better than everyone else, and there's 1, maybe 2 teams that are, in most years that are a lot worse than everyone else. And then everyone in the middle can really beat each other depending on the day. Yeah. And this year is, maybe just the best example yet of that.
I feel like the difference this year is the middle is usually like 5th through 10th. This year, the middle is 3rd through 12th, I mean, the middle is almost the entire league. And I do want to mention to you guys, we've got a few questions here, and please keep asking them. We are going to get to them. Absolutely. We like to let a few build up so we can kind of roll through those, just kind of give our thoughts off the top of our heads to start. But yeah, the SEC, I said, I think on Monday, Tier 1 is Alabama, Tier 1.5 is Georgia, and then some people want to put Florida and Texas A&M on a tier of their own. I'm not really ready to do that. I think Tier 2 or 3, whatever it is everyone else in the league, and then there's Vanderbilt. Because, and look, that's not saying Missouri can't lose to Vanderbilt. They did last year. We get it. But it's a bad Vanderbilt team. I think they're kind of off South Carolina beat them 41-7. LSU beat them 41-7. But legitimately, you've got Alabama, Georgia, you've got Vanderbilt, and then I think you've got everybody else.
Yeah, I agree. And, to your point about, Florida and A&M, like Florida's looked fine at times, but certainly, missing, it's going to be at least 2 weeks of practice in the middle of the season does not help. That's going to be a challenge for them, them playing 7 games in 7 weeks, if they, are able to play in time to host Missouri when they're scheduled to on Halloween. But yeah, I mean, we saw it this weekend. I mean, I don't know, did South Carolina upsetting Auburn shock you? Because it really wasn't a big surprise to me. Whereas, in some past years, maybe that would have been a little more surprising. And it's like that, with like you said, pretty much every team between Alabama, Georgia, and Vanderbilt, where it doesn't take a ton to see, an upset. But also you kind of can't, fans, this is natural. People love to do the transitive property and say, Team X beat Team Y by 24, and then they beat, Team Z by 14, so they should crush, whoever. I don't think I did that right. But, that just doesn't work this season because teams are so evenly matched. And there's so much unpredictability with who was available during the game, who was available during practices, how much time a team has had to gel. Like, teams are going to get better as the season goes on, you would hope. So it's pretty unpredictable, which, I think is fun.
Yeah. Hey, you said South Carolina, Auburn didn't surprise you. It surprised me. It didn't shock me. But it definitely was surprising. So we're getting some comments starting to roll in, and I want to start this show the same way we start the show every week, with Bob Douglas complimenting Mitchell Forde's presence on the show. Mitchell's voice gives Bob a reason to wake up every day, which, I mean, Bob, we're on week 5. This is becoming a bit, and we do appreciate it. It's also like borderline call the Columbia Police Department at some point, but we're not there yet. So please keep commenting. But we just want to say that it could reach that point.
I mean, I appreciate it. He is my biggest fan, and if I'm ever feeling down on myself, ever having a bad day, I just have to go back and look at his comments, and I get a big self-esteem boost. So.
I'm gonna know you're feeling awful one day when I wake up and your only tweet is at Bob Douglas. Come on, just like anything. At Bob Douglas, give me something.
That would be a bad sign.
Yeah.
That would be time to be concerned.
So this is a place to start. it's kind of the place to start because it's the place to start every week. Bradley Heath asks, chances the Florida game is canceled. And the truth is, we don't know. I mean, Mitch, you and I both read the same story yesterday that said Florida has 25 positives. Well, they had 21 positives last week. So we don't know how many of those are positives that could impact the Missouri game, how many are guys that are going to be – I think I saw one tweet that said they've got 50 guys in quarantine, but we don't know how many of them are going to be out. But you were on the SEC coaches teleconference, and Dan Mullen said what?
He said that as of now, the plan is for them to reopen their facility and resume practicing on Monday, which, if that happens, you would think would enable them to play against Missouri as long as they're above that 53-player threshold. He said they did have another player test positive in their most recent round of testing, which was yesterday. So that obviously is a little bit of a concern where, you worry about the outbreak not being totally contained, because if people, continue to test positive, as they're gathering back in the locker room and stuff like that, you're just going to have more contact tracing issues. But he said, the plan right now, they think they can start practicing on Monday. They won't have a full complement of players, but they'll have enough. And, he was asked, how much practice time do you need to play a game on October 31st? And he basically said, I don't know, it's not really in our control. We'll figure it out. So that indicated to me, unless, something happens to where you have kind of the outbreak continue, or something along those lines, that he plans to play against Missouri on October 31st.
Yeah, I want to interrupt to say that Bob Douglas has competition. IMK says Mitch for president. Look, we don't get political on this show, but it is possible I will vote for you 2 weeks from yesterday. I mean,
I don't know what my platform would be. I'll start thinking about that.
Honestly, you don't need a platform. That's as political as we're going to get on this show. Yeah, let's talk about football. So, obviously, Florida, Missouri in question. I mean, I've heard Vandy, Ole Miss in 2 weeks could be in question. And the weird part about this is the teams that are being most impacted by this are Missouri, Kentucky, by getting their schedule shifted around because now they no longer have a bye the week before they play Georgia, and they play Georgia, Tennessee, and Florida, I think, in 3 times in 4 weeks, if Florida can play, all that. So the teams that are actually impacted by this are not the teams that are, and I kind of don't want to say at fault because, these things happen. We all knew it was going to happen. But they're not the teams that are having the problems. But I don't know about you. I feel like we've reached a point where, look, maybe not everybody's going to play 10 games. Maybe not every game's going to get in. Maybe not everything's going to be on time. But we're getting to the end of the season. I mean, we're going to have a postseason, and there are going to be teams in it because I think that's what we learned from baseball is, yeah, man, it's going to get messed up, but we're going to find a way to get through this.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what the attitude needed to be at the start in order to do this thing. We said it many times, if they were just going to shut everything down when all of a sudden, every time a player tested positive or every time there was a game missed, it wasn't worth starting.
All right, it appears
really terrible happens where you have.
There you are. You froze on me for a minute, but you're back.
Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. Where was I? Where did you last hear me?
Every time a game got canceled, and then it was just your still face for 5 seconds.
Oh, that's a bummer. But yeah, basically what I was saying was, we said before the season that if every time a game got canceled, that they tried to pull the plug, it wasn't worth starting to begin with. And so I feel the same way I did last week, which is basically unless something terrible happens, someone's hospitalized or dies, they're going to try to play the season. Now, you do start to get nervous about getting all 10 games in, especially if Florida can't play on October 31st, because then you're just kind of running out of time. But as of right now, yeah, I'd be very surprised if we don't get to the end of the season.
Yeah, so, I mean, again, we'll see who they play, when they play every week, but we are, at this point, relatively confident they're playing Kentucky on Saturday, and we're kind of going to focus on that. And so what we are going to do now is actually give you guys a chance to hear from as far as I know, the only person to play on both sides of this game. We had a chance to talk to Missouri punter Grant McKinnon, and he's a graduate transfer, played his first 4 years at Kentucky, went 4-0 against Missouri. Now is on the other side. You haven't seen him a ton because Missouri hasn't punted a ton, but want you guys to listen to the conversation with Grant McKinnon on Zoom with the local media yesterday, and then we'll come back and we'll hit up all your questions, all your comments, and get into everything in the second half of the show.
Hey Grant, we know you've got Kentucky here in your past, and you've been in some games against Missouri, including that crazy one a couple years ago. I was curious, first of all, what you remember from coming to Forde and that game that came down to the wire a couple years ago, and just ahead of this one, if you've gotten a chance to talk to any former teammates who you're looking forward to seeing. Things like that, what's it like to get to play against the former team?
Right. Well, to answer your first question, I do remember, 2018 here, just down in this end zone, the last second play. I've talked about it briefly with some of the teammates around here. They don't like that moment too much, so try to keep that on the down low. But yeah, I'm definitely excited. It's definitely a game I've had circled on the schedule now that I guess it got moved up. It's still circled for me. But I do still talk to a lot of those guys. I lived with a lot of them, or I guess 3 of them. And then I talk to Max Duffy, their punter, quite often, probably about 2 or 3 times a week. So I have a really good relationship with those guys still.
Peter Ball, The Athletic. Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, Grant, I was kind of wondering what makes Max so effective at punting, and I guess how excited are you to go up against him?
Max does a great job. He does a good job of just mixing it up with going across field, and then he's just really consistent. He can hit a nice, clean ball, and under end technically is what it is, and he just has a really strong leg at doing that. And then I think their scheme is pretty good, just the way they go about it. Like I said before, going across field and just keeping the returner honest.
Eric Blum, Columbia Tribune. Go ahead, Eric.
Hey, Grant, is any part of you, it's going to be weird lining up against UK helmets in blue? I know you came here for a reason, but is any part of you going to be like, wow, I've done that before. I've been in those uniforms.
I think it is going to be kind of weird. Probably not. I mean, just looking across and be like, wow, I know literally everybody on that sideline. So, but I think once I'm out there and I'm about to punt something, I'm not going to be thinking about that. But as in, I'm not going to be thinking about, wow, well, I lived with Zach Johnson. I lived with Brett Slusher. And now I'm going against him. I'm not going to think that. I'm just going to think about my job and how I need to execute it. But I think it will be kind of weird, just maybe when I'm on the sideline looking across at them on the other side.
Colin O'Brien, Jeff City News Tribune. Go ahead, Colin.
Hey, Grant, how you doing, man?
Good. How are you?
Not bad, thanks. This team hasn't punted a whole lot through 3 games, but that doesn't necessarily mean that your job on the field isn't done if they're not punting. Just what do you like about how aggressive this offense can be, even if you're linebacker there to punt, but you're not necessarily kicking the ball?
Are you saying can you ask that again?
The team's only punted 8 times, so you haven't had a whole lot to do kicking, but you were also called on to do a fake and you went to the holder for the PATs. Just what do you like about the offense that it calls on you to do more than just punt?
Well, I think it's when I'm only punting 8 times in 3 games, we're scoring points, so that's always good. We're going to be moving the ball and being pretty effective on offense. And then I think the fake really just keeps the defense honest, just to show that we're a little more versatile. Maybe I can throw the ball and we can do more than just give it to the other team.
Did you have any quarterbacking in your background, or is that just something you've had to pick up
Somebody asked me that. The last time I threw a ball in the game was 8th grade. I played 8th grade quarterback, and then my freshman through senior year of high school, I was just a kicker and punter. So the last time I threw a pass in a game was 8th grade.
Bennett Durando. Go ahead, Bennett.
Grant, Bear was just telling us that there was sort of a team meeting where Coach Drinkwitz sort of pointed out the fact that Missouri hasn't beaten Kentucky in 5 or 6 years, and the sort of raise your hand if you have beaten Kentucky. Is that something where could you what was your perspective on that sort of moment, and did you sort of have any conversations with teammates about that afterward?
I really didn't think about it. Obviously I played there, but I never really thought I was but today I thought dang, I guess I never lost to Missouri. I won 4 times when I was at Kentucky. But, to be on this side of it, I want to win for the team, and we want to get things done and maybe switch the thing and maybe get a winning streak going the other way.
It looks like last one will be Jack Sobel from the Maneater. Go ahead, Jack.
Hey, Grant, having spent time playing for Mark Stoops, from your perspective, what about him has made him the coach that's kind of turned Kentucky around throughout his tenure?
I think he does a good job of he got everybody to buy into his philosophy, and all those players really like him as a coach. And like I said, they all just bought into his coaching philosophy and kind of turned that program around. And I think they've been to, I went to 4 straight bowl games there, so they've been on the winning end of a couple seasons.
All right, that's Grant McKinnon, played 4 years at Kentucky, now the punter at Mizzou. And Mitch, I think we can safely say that he might be the only one who didn't think about the fact that Kentucky had beaten Missouri 4 straight times. This is, I think, more than any other game or any other matchup, this one really pisses Missouri fans off. I mean, not only because they've lost 5 straight, but, man, a couple of them have been just painful losses.
Yeah, for sure. And honestly, the players and coaches were more forthright than I expected when we talked to him yesterday, and saying that this has been to swallow.
All right, so we're having some issues with Mitch's internet. I'll give him a call back here shortly. I think it's Mitch's internet. I mean, I'm still on, so I'm assuming it's on his side and in his Wi-Fi. So we'll get back to him in just a minute. But yeah, Missouri has lost again 5 straight to Kentucky. I mean, to put it in perspective, Matty Mock was in his first year as a starter when Missouri last beat Kentucky. He threw 4 touchdown passes to Dorial Green Beckham in Lexington. Look, now I know we can make a lot of jokes about how long 2020 has seemed like it lasted and all that. But, I mean, Matty Mock to DGB seems like it was 15 years ago right now. And that was the last time that Missouri beat Kentucky. So in that span is there have been a lot of different ways they've gotten beat, right? I honestly can't even remember the first one. The first one was 21-14. It was Matty Mock's last start. He got suspended the next day. Never started again, never played again for Missouri. The second one was 35-21 in Columbia. Benny Snell and Boom Williams combined to run for like 380 yards. That's not an exaggeration. Kentucky won. Third one was in Lexington. It was 40-34. Drew Lock and the offense actually played pretty well. The defense got torched. Missouri was driving to tie the game or maybe win the game. Completed a pass to Jamon Moore somewhere around like the 17, 18-yard line. And the ref suddenly got like drop foot and took about 20 seconds to walk the ball back to the middle of the field. Clock never stopped. Clock ran out. Missouri never had any legitimate shot at a play that would have won the game. 2018 was probably ultimately the first time we said, I don't think this is going to work with Barry Odom. They lost 15-14, blew, I think, a 14-3 lead, something like that. And maybe 14-0, I don't know, in the last 5 minutes. Threw a pass on 3rd and 2, played some crazy-ass defense with everybody lined up at the goal line. Terrible pass interference call that gave Kentucky an untimed down, and they scored, converted to 2-point conversion, all that. Last year, Missouri simply never showed up. I mean, there's really no other way to put it. They just never showed up in a 29-7 loss in Lexington. So we're going to try to get Mitch back on the phone here. So you guys may hear some buzzing and ringing, and if you do, I apologize. If you don't, that's great, and I've actually figured out what I'm doing. Okay, Mitch is here. Mitch, can you hear us? Me?
I can. Hopefully, it's better this time. How can you all hear me?
Yeah, hopefully it works out. I don't know. We'll get it figured out. But anyway, I just ran down the 5 straight losses to Kentucky, and I was saying that the last time Missouri beat Kentucky, it was Matty Mock to DGB, and it seems like it was 20 years ago.
Yeah, I was a freshman in college. So, I don't know, that may not seem to you all like it's been a long time for me, but for me, it seems like forever ago. What I was saying before I got dropped was I was actually kind of surprised that Eli Drinkwitz was so willing to kind of embrace the losing streak when we talked to him this week. I would have expected him to give the old coach answer of like, new staff, new zoo, something like that. But he said no, he pointed out that no one even on the coaching staff has beaten Kentucky while they were at Missouri. And that's something that I would think gives the players a little extra juice going into this one.
So some of you guys have questions and comments about this game. Justin Wirtz wants to know, how important is the start against Kentucky this week, a team that likes to run the ball and limit possessions? And, look, I think this is a huge point. If Missouri gets down, I think they were down, 21-10 to LSU? They get down 21-10 in this game, they're done. This game, I mean, frankly, I think it's going to be in the middle of the third quarter before anyone has 21 points. But the point is, if they get down 2 scores in the first half, you don't come back against Kentucky down 2 scores.
Yeah, it may have been 21-14 against LSU, but yeah, I mean, we saw too, against Tennessee, who is somewhat similar to Kentucky in that they are built on controlling the ball and controlling the clock and running the ball and not putting their quarterback in position to make mistakes. If you fall behind, it's really hard to catch up. I mean, that's important every game, but it is especially important against Kentucky. In fact, I'd say it's really, it comes down to 2-3 keys against Kentucky. Start fast, don't turn the ball over, and stop the run. And obviously that's easier said than done, but those are really the big musts when you're playing Kentucky.
Well, and kind of the weird thing about Kentucky, so they've forced 9 turnovers in the last 2 weeks. They've all been interceptions. Missouri had 5 fumbles last week. So never really close to an interception, but they couldn't hang on to the ball. But bottom line, you're not losing the turnover battle 4-0 and beating Kentucky. I mean, they just don't screw up.
Right, absolutely not. Yeah, I mean, it's similar to the start fast thing, but when you've got a team like that can run the ball so well and is good on defense. I mean, giving them short fields and easy opportunities to score is like spotting another team 2 scores. Right. And so that was a big thing. Eli Drinkwitz said even before the bye week when he didn't know that Kentucky was going to be the next opponent that really a big impact was going to be correcting the turnover margin. I think Mizzou's -5 this season, and frankly, is lucky it's not worse after a couple of those fumbles looked like they should have been recovered by LSU during the last game. So they definitely they need to get that cleaned up. Need to clean up the punt return issues, and need to try to get a takeaway or 2 on defense.
All right, so Matthew Smith asks a really good question that I could spend a long time talking about this. It says, what's the view of the state of Kentucky football across the league? I think it's really funny because Missouri fans get really mad, and I understand why, when a Tennessee fan or a Florida fan or somebody says, well, we should never lose to Missouri in football. But Missouri fans turn around and say, well, we should never lose to Kentucky in football. And I posted the numbers on Monday. In the last, look, Florida and Georgia they're a cut above everybody else in the SEC East right now. Vanderbilt has some catching up to do. So you've really got 4 teams that are trying to be number 3: Kentucky, Tennessee, South Carolina, Missouri. Over the last 5 years, and this is not like a small sample size. This is 5 seasons. This is an entire recruiting class cycle. Kentucky has the best overall record and the best SEC record among those teams. They are 10-5 in head-to-head games against those teams. Right now, people don't want to admit it, Kentucky's the 3rd best program in the SEC East, and I don't really think there's any possible way to dispute it.
Yeah, and it's funny, among fans, I think the perception is, they're a basketball school, and it's a little bit I don't want to say gimmicky, but they keep winning with last year, not a real quarterback. They put a wide receiver back there, and 2 years ago, it's they never threw the ball. They handed it off to Benny Snell every play, and everyone's like, oh, that can't keep working. But then they go and win 10 games. So I think I understand where that perception comes from among fans, but if hearing the coaches talk on the SEC teleconference today, or any time Missouri gets ready to play Kentucky, and I understand coaches always make their next opponent sound like the New England Patriots, but the respect for what Mike Stoops has done there is real. I mean, he's I think he won 2 games in each of his first 2 seasons, and has built that into a perennial contender who, it beats the teams that, like you said, that are around it or it's supposed to beat. And, it broke through and beat Florida, I think, a couple years ago. I don't think they beat Georgia yet. But, really, when you're Kentucky, that's enough. I mean, that's enough to keep your job for a long time. And that was enough at Missouri, too. That's kind of what Gary Pinkel did, which we've talked about on the site before. Or beat the teams that are around your caliber a little bit worse.
All you've got to do is win all the games you should, lose all the games you should, and then win 2/3 of the games that are kind of toss-ups. And you're 8-4 every year. And at Kentucky, at Missouri, at South Carolina, that never gets you fired. At Tennessee, it might get you fired. It shouldn't anymore. But Tennessee fans aren't very realistic, and weird things happen. I'm Case says Kentucky's a team every analyst loves to love. One of those teams, whenever you say they're good, people know you watch the tape. They're a good football team, but they're getting a lot of hype. They are, but some of it's deserved. I mean, they held a Mike Leach team with 0 offensive points. They beat Auburn. Now, look, 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, they did get beat 42-41 by Ole Miss. So they're not infallible. But here's the craziest stat to me. Mark Stoops, for everything he's done at Kentucky, and he's done a lot. I mean, he's as successful as anybody at Kentucky since Rich Brooks, who was the Kentucky coach when I was growing up. But if he wins this game this weekend, he is over 500 in his Kentucky career for the first time ever. And you know what? Kentucky fans are thrilled by that. I mean, that's where they're at, and that's where they've been. I don't know. I think Bear Bryant was the coach there maybe for a year way back when, but this is a program that there's a lot of strength in knowing what you are. And, yeah, it'd be great to go out and win the SEC East every year or compete for it every year. But I think Kentucky fans understand that that's not reality. And if they can go 7-5, 8-4 every year, they're pretty happy with that. And then every now and then maybe you do break through and get 10-3 with Benny Snell. And that's great. You want that. But 7 wins every year are going to keep you employed for a long time in Lexington.
Yeah, for sure. And you talk about the fans knowing who they are. I think, too, the staff has succeeded in part because they know what that room is, and they're going out there. They know what they're looking for in recruits. They're looking for the Midwestern kids who don't have the athleticism or the raw ability to go to a school like Ohio, Michigan, but who fit in their system and want to play grinded out type games and along the line of scrimmage and give them a shot at playing in the SEC at the program that's closest to them, which I think is something that Missouri can and sort of has started to do a little bit more of in this most recent class with the dipping into Indiana and stuff like that and recruiting some guys in Iowa. So I definitely think I have great respect for what Mark Stoops has done there. I mean, I grew up in Kentucky. It's people don't care. I don't want to say people don't care about the football team. They have good fans, but no matter what the football team is doing, John Calipari saying something in a press conference or signing a recruit is going to be the biggest news of the day. And so to build that program up to where it is really impressive.
Yeah, and another comment from Case. This almost seems like a game in past years where we think if Mizzou wins this game, they could put together a really good season. If they win this game, they could split Georgia and Florida and win more games. And see, that's where I think I agree with the first part of that. Kentucky and South Carolina are the games you look at. If Missouri can win those games, they can have a really good season. Missouri's problem the last 4 years, last 5 years, is real simple. They're 4-11 against South Carolina, Kentucky, and Tennessee. And now, yes, it's 0-5 against Kentucky, but it's still only 4-6 against Tennessee and South Carolina. So that's not good enough. But the second part, I don't think beating Kentucky means you're necessarily going to beat Georgia or Florida. I look at those as probably losing those games. The rest of the games on the schedule are swing games. And you got to go, 50-50?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I kind of just mentioned all years it's not smart, but this year especially, you kind of can't try to pull the transitive property and say, well, because we looked good in that game, we can then do X in another game. Now, is it possible that they catch Florida with 20 guys in quarantine, including maybe some starters, and go down there and win, yes, absolutely, it's possible. But I don't think it would become any more possible because they beat Kentucky by 10 points or something like that.
Right. I want to take a quick break. Travis recognizing Bob Douglas, so appreciate Bob becoming really the kind of almost a co-host at this point. But want to remind you the 573 report is brought to you by 573Tees. Go to 573tees.com. Go to the show on our website. If you go into that story, there's a link for a 10% discount for Power Mizzou subscribers on 573Tees. They've got Chief stuff, Cardinal stuff, Columbia, Missouri stuff, Mizzou stuff, Eli Drinkwitz stuff, all kinds of stuff. As the name might suggest, they have a lot of T-shirts. They also actually have sweatshirts and hats and things like that. So appreciate 573Tees for sponsoring us. Appreciate all you guys being here and watching along, your comments, and we're trying to catch up. I'm going kind of out of order here because I wanted to hit on some of the Kentucky stuff. We're going to move on to some more SEC stuff here in a minute, but the first thing I want to get to here, because we've got a couple comments about it, and Mitch, you may know more about this than I do. I just clicked on a thread on the board when I saw it. It says Kevin Coleman, WTF. Kevin Coleman is a high-profile receiver out of St. Louis in the 2022 class. I had some things to do. I did a radio interview. I walked my dog. Did I miss that Kevin Coleman committed somewhere? What happened here? Do we know?
I think he released a list. I think he released a list that didn't include Missouri, but
Okay.
I actually I haven't seen it. I've been writing and then was eating dinner right before coming on this. We had a Zoom call earlier as well, so I've kind of missed it as well. That is my understanding. I just saw
I saw a tweet that
had
had
it on the board.
Yeah, I saw a tweet that had like 15 teams graphics on it. Maybe that means he's not coming to Missouri. I honestly have no idea. I've covered recruiting long enough that I'm now at the point. Look, if it's more than a top 5, I'm not even going to retweet it. I don't care.
Yeah.
I mean, good for the kids to put out, hey, here's all the offers I have. Here's my top 24, whatever it is. I'm not disparaging their right to do so. But a top 12 for a 2022 kid at this point, I mean, I don't know. I don't think it's out of the question that Missouri could get back into it. And another question, Sir Mufflebuns, is there a problem with recruiting at wide receiver, constantly missing out on targets, and same thing with offensive line? And it's fair to be concerned about the recruiting at those positions in this class. No question. Now, I don't think it's as easy as saying wide receivers don't want to play here. I mean, look, you had to walk on a kid that was at Coffeyville Community College a year ago, just lead the team in receptions against LSU. So if you're a receiver, you're probably looking at that thinking, hey, maybe I could do that. I don't think it's about the guy recruiting him, but yeah, offensive line and wide receiver right now in this class, definitely a question mark.
Yeah, and yeah, I can see where those questions are coming from. My concern level with the wide receiver position is pretty low. They went in to this recruiting cycle, this 2021 recruiting cycle, knowing they only wanted to take 1 or 2 guys, and therefore prioritizing 2 or 3 guys and kind of putting everyone else on the back burner. And it didn't work out with those 1 or 2 guys. And I think you kind of know when you're doing that. Obviously, you'd like to land those guys, and specifically talking here about the 2 guys from East St. Louis, but you kind of know maybe they could have gotten another guy committed earlier, but you can probably find someone of the same caliber, later in the cycle or in the transfer market. Not the caliber of the East St. Louis guys, but the other guys you maybe didn't prioritize as much early on. And then the 2022 receivers, Luther Burden and Kevin Coleman from St. Louis. Yes, that'd be great. And at a certain point, you do want to start, keeping those high-profile players at home, but I'm still not to the point yet where I'm surprised or willing to, maybe be outraged about a 5-star kid picking Ohio State or Oklahoma over Missouri. It's just It's going to happen more times than not. Offensive lines, definitely a little bit of a question mark. Only one commit there, but I do like what I've seen from the group on the field so far. So Marcus Johnson looks like he can coach.
Yeah, and while you were talking, Jonah Roberts actually texted me the screenshot of Kevin Coleman's tweet. I was wrong. There are 14 teams on it. So I don't know. I guess that means as of today, Missouri is not in the top 14 for Kevin Coleman. All right. Look, I don't mean to blow that off. If you want to stress out about that, go ahead. It's, I don't know, 14 months till these kids sign. I think I'm going to pass on stressing out about it quite yet. All right, Trey wants to know, who has helped themselves the most in terms of next level prospects so far? Josh Bledsoe? I think that's one. Mitch, I don't know. I want to get your take first because I've got a guy in mind, and I want to see what you think.
All right, I'm quickly running through the roster in my head. I mean, Larry Roundtree has looked good. I think, probably better than he did last season. I don't know if he's I still don't know if he's the guy who gets drafted or how much different it is. Bledsoe comes to mind. I don't know. Who are you thinking of? Because, I mean, Nick Bolton, everyone, knew was going to be a stud, and he has been.
The guy I have in my head is Tyler Beatty.
Yeah.
He has, like, that Alabama game, I watched him, and then LSU too. I watched him and thought, that's a guy that, like, he doesn't look out of place. I don't mean, look, Missouri had a lot of guys make plays in that game. But, some of those guys, aren't, I mean, it's scheme getting Michael Wilson open 41 yards down the field. Like, Tyler Beatty was lining up, and he can run with those guys on those defenses. And he catches the ball, obviously, very well out of the backfield. I think he's still Missouri's third leading receiver. Could actually even be second because Damon Hazelton didn't play last week. He does a nice job running the football. You're not going to line up in an I formation and hand him the ball on 3rd and 1 very often, but there's a lot of guys in the NFL that are making a living doing what Tyler Beatty's doing right now.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good pick. Yeah, I mean, like the big thing with him is just, can he stand up to the physicality of it? I mean, he's not a big dude. That said, there is absolutely a role to be had in the NFL for a guy who can, come in on 3rd down, pick up blitzes, which he's done a nice job this year. Drinkwitz actually mentioned that yesterday, kind of went out of his way to mention that yesterday, and catch the ball out of the backfield and contribute on special teams. As long as he can, withstand kind of the hits, and he pretty much has so far. I mean, I think he missed a couple of games his freshman year, maybe with an injury, if I'm not mistaken. But for the most part, he's been fine. So yeah, actually, that's a good pick. I don't, see him being like, a first-day draft pick or anything, but definitely a guy who'd find his way onto a roster and stick around.
And I always go back with Tyler to that Purdue game his freshman year. It was in West Lafayette where, Missouri seemed like it had the game well in hand. Purdue made this. It was the night that the Purdue quarterback David Blau threw for 972,000 yards, I think was the official number. But, it was like 97-96, and Missouri needed points. And it was the last drive, and the running back was Tyler Beatty. It wasn't Crockett. It wasn't Roundtree. It was Tyler Beatty out there, true freshman, 3rd game of his career. And he made one of the biggest plays of the game. And he's a guy that, look, when he came here, I thought he'd be a good college player, but I didn't think he'd be an NFL player, but I think he's making himself into one. Travis wants to know, are the transfer receivers in the doghouse, or is the new staff just like everyone else and loved what we saw from the other receivers in the LSU game? I think Kiki Chisholm is still listed technically as like a possible co-starter. Damon Hazelton is now listed as 3rd string on the depth chart. So what was your reaction when you saw that depth chart on Tuesday afternoon?
Yeah, first of all, I just would say with all depth chart related stuff, it's not gospel, right? Like last year, Missouri put out a depth chart that stayed the same for like the last 9 weeks of the season. It didn't include like several position changes. However, I think it's fair to wonder if Damon Hazelton is in the doghouse. The guys that were listed as co-starters were Kiki Chisholm, Tosky Dove, Michael Wilson, Boo Smith, Jaylen Knox, and Barrett Bannister. Certainly, like if you're getting that expansive, you would think the guy who caught 9 passes over the first 2 games and who they went out and got would maybe get listed on there. Now, does that mean he actually plays less? I don't know. Maybe, they're trying to send a message, something like that. But at the same time, like if I were the coaches, I would probably, try to ride the hot hands for the most part. Look, the receivers were just about flawless against LSU. Didn't have a drop. Consistently got open. Part of that was LSU not wanting to cover anyone, but still, I mean, as long as if you keep seeing that. And I would definitely be tempted to kind of ride the hot hand because, I mean, Damon Hazelton, he's gotten open a few times. He struggled drops a little bit, but like I haven't seen anything from Kiki Chisholm yet that suggests like, this guy just has to be in there every play. So I'm fine with going with the guys who have been producing.
Yeah, I mean, Jaylen Knox is going to start. I don't think there's any question about that. And then beyond that, hey, we'll see. And I think I think Tauski Dove clearly. Look, he earned playing time, and I think he earned a start. We'll see. I mean, and coaches love to say it doesn't matter who starts, it matters who finishes. No, it matters to players who starts. Now, look, there can be if you open up in like a 2 tight end set and a receiver doesn't play the first play because of that, that's okay. But the guys who play that first drive, that matters to guys. Don't kid yourself. It matters. Sir Mufflebun says, how do you think Mizzou should deal with this Kentucky secondary? I don't – it seems very obvious, but opposing quarterbacks seem to have had trouble doing it. I think you should throw the ball to guys on your team, first of all, right? I mean, and I don't mean to be too because part of me does think what Kentucky's doing has to be unsustainable, right? I mean, you can't rely on a quarterback being as bad as Jarrett Guarantano was last week every week. Some of those interceptions have to do with scheme and skill, but, man, some of them are just the quarterback was awful.
Yeah, I started chuckling right away when you paused before answering that question because I knew you were going to say just don't throw it to them. But yeah, I mean it's true. Like yes, getting 9 interceptions across 2 games and having 3 pick sixes is absolutely not sustainable. I mean we saw it with Missouri last season. That defense continued to be good, but during that stretch when they were getting 2 defensive touchdowns a game, like that couldn't. To be
fair,
up.
If Cale Garrett would have been healthy, they may have scored a defensive touchdown every game.
We can never know.
Right.
You cannot deny that he was on pace.
Can't disprove a negative.
So I mean, I think the biggest thing is just going to be for Connor Bazelak, just don't try to do more than you're comfortable doing, or then don't try to force something that's not there. He did a really good job against LSU, I thought, of being on time with the quick throws and taking easy completions, and he didn't, scramble around a whole lot and try to force throws across his body or into double coverage or anything like that. So it's just being smart, I think, and knowing, that this might not be a super high scoring game. You don't have to, score every time you touch the ball.
Right. Yeah. Be okay with punting the football every now and then. Also, I personally would recommend, we heard from Grant McKinnon earlier, I personally would recommend if you're throwing a pass, have your quarterback throw it and not your punter. But whatever. Sometimes you catch them off guard. Justin says, how much of an advantage could the bye week be for MU before playing Kentucky? A lot of bad showings for Barry Odom when he had time to prepare. Would love to see that change with drinking. Look, Justin brings up a really good point. The craziest thing about Barry Odom's career here to me was that the more time he had to get his team ready for a game, the worse they were. I mean, it went against all logic. And I think I would more often be accused of being probably too pro Barry Odom rather than too anti Barry Odom. But every time they had a week off, they were bad. And every time they had a month off, they were absolutely awful. But I mean, yeah, a bye theoretically, I mean, the only guys we know aren't playing in this game are Kobe Whiteside and Darius Robinson, correct? I mean, other than guys we know have been out all year.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. First of all, the Barry Odom thing was amazing. Season openers, bowl games off of bye weeks was like.
I mean, even the wins were like 72-41 over Missouri State. Like it didn't even count.
Right. Yeah. That said, I mean, does the bye week, give Missouri a huge edge in preparing for Kentucky? I mean, probably not, because they didn't find out they were playing Kentucky until Friday night. But getting healthy is important. I mean, they played three really physical teams to start the season. And they had a few guys in quarantine and a few guys hurt, as we saw against LSU. So it can't hurt. And, got a chance to probably scout that game live on Saturday, which is, I suppose, helpful. But yeah, I think I don't know how, that plays a massive role or anything like that.
Yeah. And, Case, going back to what we were talking about earlier, said his point is he thinks you could take momentum from a win in this game and catch Florida sleeping. I mean, it's going to be Florida's first game in 3 weeks if they do manage to play. I think they'll be ready to go. Now, the question is going to be who is ready to go and, who's playing in that game. And I'm not saying it's impossible they go down and win in Gainesville. I mean, we've already talked about on any given day, yeah, they could beat Florida. And they could lose to Arkansas or they could lose to Mississippi State. I guess my point is Georgia, you're probably assuming is a loss. Florida's likely a loss, but not necessarily. Throw that in the maybe. But the point is if you've got – that gives you 5 swing games the rest of the year. Look, if Eli Drinkwitz wins all 5 of them, I'll contribute to building the statue. But
yeah.
Teams – of Missouri's ilk, of Kentucky's ilk, of Tennessee's ilk, they don't win every game that's a toss-up usually. If they do, they have a hell of a season.
Right. I mean, we already saw that against Tennessee. Went into that game saying, if Missouri plays well, maybe, and then it really wasn't even competitive. I mean, yeah, I think this point, was brought up on our message board this week was just, hey, it's a total logjam. Things break right for Missouri, maybe they could contend in the East. And it's maybe they could win a few more games than we were expecting, but to win the East, they'd have to be almost perfect.
They got to win out.
You got to win every single swing game and get every single break. And they're not quite talented enough to do that at this point in the Drinkwitz tenure.
And we talked about this a little bit earlier with the transitive property. By the way, it's the only thing I remember from high school math. It's if A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C. But it never works. But the SEC this year has proven it really doesn't work. I mean, just because, Tennessee destroyed Missouri and Kentucky destroyed Tennessee. That does not mean Kentucky's beating Missouri by 59 points this weekend. Or, Mississippi State beat LSU and then lost to Arkansas the next week. I mean, we don't know what the hell's going to happen in this league. This league it's nuts this year, and I think college football really is that way too. And we'll talk a little bit about the SEC stuff in a minute. So as a transition to that, I do want to get in just kind of a general football comment here because some of you may know that Mr. Forde here is a Broncos fan, and they might play the defending Super Bowl champions this weekend, and Travis wants to know if I have ordered my Le'Veon Bell Chiefs jersey yet. I think, frankly, I might order a Clyde Edwards-Helaire jersey before that after last weekend. But, Mitch, like your guys' chances this weekend, right?
Oh, no. I mean, I'm certainly not in any sort of a position to talk smack or predict a win. If it happens, that's wonderful. I'm not expecting it. I don't know. I mean, Drew Lock being healthy helps a little bit, I guess, although he wasn't
right
spectacular at the end of last week. But you don't go into a game, against the Chiefs expecting to win. You're
in football purgatory where you're not good enough to contend to win anything, but you're not bad enough to get rewarded for it. Dude,
and that's where
if you're not going 12-4 in the NFL, you got to go 2-14.
Yeah, it's actually, I mean, that has definitely been a frustrating thing. It's been ever since the Super Bowl. It's been pretty much 5 to 7 wins every year.
I would like to actually see college football do that. I think the SEC should go, all right, so if you finish last in the SEC, you just get to go take a guy from Alabama's recruiting class. And if you finish 13th, you get a guy from Georgia's recruiting class. They just pick anyone you want, and that kid has to go there. I think that'd be fun.
That would be fun. At the very least, maybe tailor the schedule based off the results like the NFL sort of does, where
right.
If you were the worst team in the West, you get to play the worst team in the East or something like that. As it is right now, poor Arkansas just keeps getting thrown in the gauntlet every single year.
Right. Yeah, actually, if you finish 7th in either division, you actually get to sub Kansas for an SEC game. That counts as if you go beat Kansas, that counts as an SEC. We should think of ways to do this because we're kind of obviously we're joking, but it is October 21st. And I can tell you right now, the playoff is almost certainly Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, and Georgia. Like, that sucks, man. I mean, we've got 7 weeks left in this season, 8 weeks. Teams haven't even started playing. And I am 90% sure I know the 4 playoff teams. That sucks.
Yeah, although I will say I'll be interested to see if a 2-loss Georgia team could get in over a 1-loss Big 12 or Pac-12 champion. I think it should, but the committee has shown that they love the loss column and they love the conference championships. So I don't know if that would actually happen. But yes, I generally agree with you. I mean, 12 of the 14 teams in the SEC have not much to play for at this point, other than the Quick Lane Bowl or whatever bowls are going to happen this year.
Yeah, I guess Florida still technically does because they could beat Georgia and all that. Yeah. So, all right. So one more just random football question before we get to the SEC stuff. Case wants to know what happened with Albert and the red zone offense last week. So that's directed to you.
Yeah, I mean, he got targeted a lot. Drew Lock still likes him. He just did not catch the ball. They weren't like stone cold drops, but they were passes you want to catch if you have a chance at sticking around in the NFL.
Yes,
we'll leave it at that.
If you are a 3rd or a 4th round draft pick, those are passes that can make an impression. And if they are dropped, they can make a different impression. So once again, appreciate all you guys being here and watching. Pretty good numbers this week. Hit the like button while you're here. We're going to finish up the last 15 minutes or so talking some SEC football. It's a light schedule this week, but hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Check out 573tees.com. Go through our site, get a 10% discount there. They obviously present this every week. So the SEC ticker is running across the bottom of the screen, and it goes really fast because there's not that much there this week. I think there were already a couple of planned, but this is the week the buys were planned to start. And then obviously Florida can't play. Vandy can't play. So Vandy was on a bye anyway, but wouldn't be able to play. So there's only 3 games outside of Mizzou and Kentucky. I don't know, man. Auburn and Ole Miss, I mean, play that 10 times, they both probably win 5.
Yeah, probably so. I think I picked Auburn just solely because Gus Malzahn usually gets people on the brink of firing him and then wins a few games. So I just kind of expect him to do that again, but I would not be surprised at all if Ole Miss wins that.
Yeah, I mean, and so did you watch any of Ole Miss Arkansas last week?
I did. I watched a bit of the second half. I saw a few of the interceptions.
I watched most of it, and I mean, first of all, I actually think Matt Corral's a good quarterback. I like him, but man, that was not his night. But also, like, that loss was on Lane Kiffin. He refuses to kick a field goal ever. Apparently, he's never going to do it. And if he'd done
that's part of his charm.
Yeah, but if he'd done it twice, his team might have actually had a chance to win in the last 5 minutes.
My attitude towards Lane Kiffin is you don't really bring him there to like win games and be a schematic genius. You just bring him there to like entertain people, put people in the seats, land some recruits, score some points.
And look, he's doing that, no question. And all right, so this is good. Drew is asking how fun. Neil and Jay are my buddies that I also do another podcast with, the Greatest Pod in the South. It's their podcast, but I'm on it fairly frequently. And they run the Ole Miss and Auburn boards, and Drew's asking how fun their message boards were last weekend. So, Mitch, I don't know if you do this, but one of the things I like to do is just find the teams that have the worst weekend, and I like to go read their message boards because it reminds me that other people put up with the same stuff we put up with. And, like, I'm not the only one that has to get on every Saturday night and read that everybody should be fired and maybe some people should be executed.
Yeah, it is really quite impressive how sports can make, like, pretty rational and or intelligent grown men just like really emotional and want to kill people and take their jobs away. But like, yeah, I'm not. No, I've been there after a bad loss. You just want something to happen. You want everyone else to feel as bad as you do.
And I have been on the record many times since Missouri joined the SEC as saying Tennessee fans are the most crazy and unreasonable fans in the SEC. I don't know, man. I've gotten to know a little bit more about Auburn fans. They're nuts. Like they're always mad because they're mad if they lose. But they're also mad if they win because it means they can't fire their coach. So, like, they're just pissed off 100% of the time. And I love it. I love reading our Auburn message board.
Yeah, the weird things just happen at Auburn. Like, I don't know. Yeah, this whole situation with Malzahn, his whole era, and like getting Bruce Pearl down there. I don't know. Yeah, it is an interesting. Like, Tennessee fans, I think, they have more, like, bile towards opponents and other fans and maybe the media, right. And whereas Auburn is just like, there's this more directed inward at their own
hate
school.
Themselves. And to be fair, Auburn has won a national title this century. So,
yes.
All right. So Case wants to know who will be less bad, Matt Corral or Bo Nix. Look, I actually think Matt Corral's a good quarterback. Like, I don't know if he's going to win a million games because I'm not sure how good Ole Miss is. But, like, I think Matt Corral has talent. I think Bo Nix is, like, he's just a guy that people made into much more than a guy because he threw a game-winning touchdown pass with 16 seconds left at his first college start. But if you ask me who I want to quarterback my team, I'm taking Matt Corral between those two.
Yes, 100%. I mean, does that mean Ole Miss will win? Maybe not, because Auburn's got more talent around its team, especially on the defense. But yes, if I'm picking a quarterback who will be less bad, I'm taking Corral there every time.
Yeah. So the next game on the SEC schedule, Alabama at Tennessee. Tennessee, not great right now. not feeling. Firing coaches. I saw a tweet that said that the defensive line coach, may have gotten fired in the middle of the Kentucky game. Which
I hope that's true, and I hope that story gets told.
It would seem incredibly on brand for Tennessee for that to be the case. I don't know. Alabama's going to win this game by many points. As many as Nick Saban wants to win.
Yeah, I have nothing bad there.
And look, one thing about Alabama that I noticed in that Georgia game, Georgia has the guys to compete with Alabama at every position except one. People want to say Mac Jones is just a beneficiary of having great receivers. Dude, Mac Jones is going to be a first-round draft pick. That kid threw some beautiful footballs in that game.
Yeah, he's been great all season. He had a couple against Missouri that were just perfect throws. That one in the back of the end zone to Jaylen Waddle comes to mind. But yeah, I mean, like, yes, you absolutely have to have a quarterback right now to compete. Georgia showed that, but B, good offense beats good defense pretty much every time right now. And I think, I mean, like, Alabama is not, they've got some deficiencies that are unlike most Alabama teams. Like, it was wild to see them jump off sides, late in the first half against Georgia and have some Georgia guys running wide open. But I don't know of a defense that can stop their offense. Their offensive line is amazing. Their wide receiver core is the best in the country. And if Mac Jones plays like this, I truly, like, I don't think there's a team that can stop them. Your only hope is to score with them and get the ball on the last possession.
So Clemson, pretty much.
Yeah. Or maybe Ohio State.
Yeah. We haven't even seen them yet. So last SEC game, South Carolina LSU. I don't know. This is they're gonna play it, and I have zero thoughts about it. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think Miles Brennan isn't playing, so that would seem to not bode well for LSU. But that's the extent of my thoughts.
That does bring up. Well, I am interested to see if Bo Pelini actually murders someone on the field. But Miles Brennan played like most of that game against Missouri, where he threw for 400 yards with like a torn abdominal muscle.
Yes, apparently so.
Pretty impressive to me.
Yeah. Yeah, good for him. I mean, he went from like, after the first game, people were, quite a bit of the anger was at him. Not all. Bo Pelini got his fair share, but just because he wasn't Joe Burrow, and I think he threw a pick or two, but like he's their best player, other than Terrence Marshall at this point. He's been really good. The rest of the team, not so much.
Yeah, and True brings up a good point. If LSU loses that one, Bo is going to be toast. I think that's possible. They might fire a $2 million coordinator after week 4. That would be, that is on brand for the SEC, and I might cheer for South
Carolina. I was just
Carolina.
about to say extremely SEC of them.
Yeah. All right. So last thing, and we're going to end it in the SEC part on this. We'll have a couple just kind of closing thoughts on Mizzou, Kentucky. Case says, I don't think Alabama should have been allowed to have Judy, Ruggs, Smith, and Waddle. How do you even begin to rank them? So I was thinking about this earlier this week. On his own team last year, Jaylen Waddle was the 4th best wide receiver. That's stupid. That I agree. Yeah. That shouldn't happen. I remember, Mitch, I don't know if you remember when we were in Tuscaloosa for the Alabama game, they threw like a little screen pass to Henry Ruggs, and then it was on like their own 16-yard line. And Henry Ruggs was just shot out of a rocket. And like by the 30, there was no chance any Missouri player was catching him. He's the fastest person I've ever seen play football in person, except for maybe Tyreek Hill.
Yeah. And in that same game, like the 4th play, or maybe even like the 2nd play, they threw that bomb over the top to Judy, and he was similar. He outran everybody. That's all it was just run straight. It was that is an absurd collection of talent. It goes back to our plan to redistribute the wealth a little bit here. And Vandy, congrats, you're getting an Alabama receiver next year.
Yeah, Vandy should absolutely have Jaylen Waddle this year. Arkansas should have Devontae Smith. And then we'd find out how good Mac Jones was. We're remaking the SEC on this show every week. True, to answer your question, I'm pretty sure Bo Pelini makes $2.3 million. I could be wrong, but I think that's right.
Yeah, it's over 2. I know that.
Good deal. Travis wants to know when we get a finalized Mizzou basketball schedule. Nobody knows. Honestly, the season starts theoretically a month from Sunday, and nobody has any idea what the schedule is going to be, anything along those lines. And we are going to talk some more basketball on this show as it gets closer and we have a little bit of chance to talk to guys and all that. But I don't know, Mizzou, Kentucky this weekend. And I don't know, just kind of, we've got 3 more days, so we're going to preview the hell out of it. But just for this audience, Mitch, kind of closing thoughts?
Yeah, it goes back to, it's like, it's kind of simple. If Missouri can turn the ball over, stop the run, and not get in an early deficit, if they can start decently fast, you got to they'll be right there. Now, obviously, doing those things is a lot easier said than done. That's why Kentucky's beat a lot of teams over the last 3 or 4 years, is because they run the ball really well and they take the ball away from you. But I think that's what it's going to come down to. I definitely, you're a little worried about Missouri's defensive line. They've struggled at times, especially against Tennessee, holding up against the run. That'll be an area to watch. But certainly a game I could see going either way at this point.
Yeah, I would say my closing thought is, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me 5 consecutive years, and I'm just a straight-up moron. I am done going into this game giving you reasons that Missouri should win this game. Now, look, Missouri can win this game. For all the reasons Mitch just said, Missouri can win this game. But I refuse to give Missouri the credit to say they're going to beat Kentucky until they go out and beat Kentucky. This is the hurdle. We got to quit talking about how do you catch Florida, how do you catch Georgia. You got to establish yourself in front of Tennessee and South Carolina, and you got to catch Kentucky. And that's Eli Drinkwitz's first mission in these first 2 to 3 seasons. Do that. Establish yourself as the 3rd best program in this division. And then, if you're still here, you can talk about winning the division and catching Georgia and Florida and all that. But for now, all that talk is dumb until you go out and beat Kentucky this weekend. And then maybe do it again I don't know, shocking, I know, twice in a row. But we'll see how it goes. So we will be back here on this channel at 1:15 on Saturday afternoon. We'll have the Burger Smokehouse at home tailgate. Mitch is going to check in from the stadium. I'm trying to line some different things up for the game watch along because he'll be in the press box. We'll have the post game show, all that. Already got the Boulevard of the Week picked out. Could be a dangerous Saturday night on YouTube, but we'll do that. So appreciate you guys joining us. 573Ts. Go to 573Ts.com. Thanks a lot. Hit like, hit subscribe. Let your friends know. We do this every Wednesday night, 7:30, whether Missouri plays a football game or not. And we usually find out about noon that day if they do. But we're here 7:30 regardless. So thanks for joining us. We will see you here next week, and plenty of coverage, obviously, on PowerMizzou.com leading up to the game. And I don't know, Mitch, we could do a live show Sunday afternoon for Chiefs Broncos. How do you feel about that?
Ooh, probably not. No one wants to. That doesn't sound good to me. I do think your what you said earlier, dangerous Saturday night on YouTube. You should just change the name of the post game show to that.
That's not a terrible idea. We can find a sponsor for that. So, all right, we will finish the same way we started with a Bob Douglas comment, wishing Mitch sweet dreams. So, see y'all later. Have a good night.